The story: Night on the Loveland Bridge, 1955. The town of Loveland, Ohio, in the 1950s was a peaceful, quiet place nestled beside the wide Ohio River. Cornfields stretched endlessly, small wooden houses, with porches overlooking the river stood warmly, and the paved roads, with few passing cars, were familiar sights. The people lived simply, most working as farmers or in the local factory. Life in Loveland drifted by in the stillness of rural America, only occasionally stirred by rumors or stories shared at the town bar. But on one night in 1955, that tranquility was shattered by a strange event, an event that would place Loveland into history with a legend that could never be erased: the Loveland Frogman. That night, the sky was moonless, with dark clouds blotting out every trace of light. The traveler, a businessman whose name would later be forgotten, was driving his old sedan home after a long trip. The clock on the dashboard neared midnight. He felt exhausted, his eyelids heavy, struggling to stay awake. The empty country road was so silent that the hum of his engine seemed to echo through the woods. He had driven that route many times, and the riverside bridge crossing a small river was just another familiar stop. Yet that night, something felt different. Thick fog rose from the river, swallowing the road. His vision shrank to just a few meters ahead. He turned on the radio to break the oppressive silence, but the weak signal produced only static and distorted sounds. Frustrated, he shut it off, leaving only the whistle of wind through the car windows and the steady purr of the engine. As his car approached the bridge, he suddenly noticed three small figures standing together by the roadside. At first, he thought they were children out late, or perhaps some fishermen heading home. But when the headlights illuminated them, he froze. Those creatures were not human. They stood upright, about 4 feet tall, roughly the height of a 10-year-old child. But their appearance was grotesquely different. Their bodies were thin, covered in shiny, slimy skin that gleamed like that of a fish under the headlights. Their heads were large and disproportionate, with wide mouths stretching across their faces and bulging round eyes that glowed faintly yellow. What terrified him most was the way they stood, not hunched or crawling, but upright, like people. The hairs on the back of his neck bristled. His hands gripped the steering wheel tighter, heart racing in his chest. For a split second, he wanted to believe he was mistaken. But then, one of the creatures raised its arm, revealing something strange. It was a small rod, about half the length of a human arm, and it glowed. The light was not blinding but faint, flickering like a cold purple sparkler. The creature lifted the rod high, tracing arcs in the air, leaving trails of glowing patterns. Its motions resembled some sort of ritual, or perhaps a signal. The other two stood still, occasionally tilting their heads, their wide yellow eyes fixed either on the glowing rod or the car. Then they made a sound, something the man would never forget, a series of hoarse croaks, like frogs calling, but with rhythm, almost as if it were a language of their own. His throat tightened. It felt as if he couldn't breathe. The night around him suddenly became unnaturally silent. Even the crickets, so constant in Ohio's summer nights, were gone. Only the soft roll of his tires and the pounding of his heart remained. When he tried to look straight ahead again, the one holding the glowing rod turned its head toward him. Its bulging yellow eyes caught the headlights and gleamed as they locked onto his. That gaze was unlike any animal he had ever known. It held reason, awareness, even judgment. He felt stripped bare, as though the creature could read every thought in his mind. He screamed, pure instinct taking over. Slamming the gas pedal, the car roared across the bridge, leaving the three figures behind. In the rearview mirror, he glimpsed them leap unnaturally, long, powerful jumps like frogs, but faster, stronger, before vanishing into the thick fog beneath the bridge. His whole body shook violently. He drove like a madman, refusing to stop until he reached the town. Sweat drenched his shirt, his hands trembling on the wheel. He pulled up to his house, gasping for air, his heart still racing wildly. He could not believe what he had just witnessed. The next morning, he told his story to a few acquaintances. At first, they laughed. Some said he was simply tired and had mistaken an animal, perhaps a dog, or some strange swamp creature. Others claimed he was hallucinating, or drunk. But in his voice, in his vivid descriptions, the height, the glowing eyes, the rod of light, the strange croaking. There was a truth that unsettled those who listened. Rumors spread quickly throughout Loveland. Parents warned their children not to stay out past midnight. Curious youths gathered at Riverside Bridge hoping to hunt the frogman. But they returned empty-handed, or with only strange sounds from the riverbank to tell. The townspeople split into two camps, those who believed some unknown creature lurked near the Ohio River, and those who dismissed it as nonsense. But the man himself lived haunted by the memory. Nightmares plagued him. Again and again, he found himself back on the bridge in his dreams, facing the three figures, their glowing yellow eyes piercing into him. Once, waking at midnight, he swore he heard that same horse croaking outside his window. Mustering his courage, he turned on the light, only to find nothing there, except a slimy streak of moisture smeared across the sill. He shivered all night, unable to close his eyes. The legend grew, embroidered by imagination. Some said the frogmen were descendants of an ancient species living beneath the river. Others believed they were extraterrestrials, with the glowing rod as their advanced technology. The superstitious whispered that they were demons, omens of misfortune soon to befall the town. Whatever the truth, the 1955 encounter became the first stone laid in building the legend of the Loveland Frogman, a story that would haunt Ohio for decades. The businessman eventually left Loveland, but the memory of that night never left him. He carried the burden for the rest of his life, sometimes recounting it to those he trusted. Through his words, the legend spread, passed from mouth to mouth, written down, becoming part of Loveland's collective memory. Even now, whenever thick fog rises over the Ohio River, people still whisper, could the frogman still be there, waiting for someone to cross the bridge and see it once more? Part 2. The Spreading Rumor, Loveland, late 1950s. In the days after the terrified man returned from the Loveland Bridge, the small riverside town along the Ohio seemed no longer as peaceful as before. Loveland had always been a quiet countryside, where people had known each other for years, living among lush farmlands, narrow streets, and dirt paths leading into the woods. Here, any strange story could become an endless topic of gossip, and his account was like a spark thrown onto a pile of dry straw. The rumor of a frog-like creature spread quickly, from the roadside cafe to the crowded tavern, from the church pews to the school hallways. People retold the story in different tones. Some shivered in fear, others laughed in disbelief, while many felt an uneasy shadow creeping over the town. At first, most listeners thought it was just a joke, a farmer working late, perhaps drunk, imagining odd shapes on the bridge and spinning them into a wild tale. But the determination in the witness's eyes, the way he insisted there were three creatures instead of one, and the bizarre detail of the glowing rod made many hesitate. Instead of mocking, some curious souls began sneaking around the bridge at night, hoping to glimpse something unusual. Each time they returned empty-handed, they still added embellishments to their retellings, making the story grow larger, darker, more haunting. On hot summer nights, with cicadas droning in the trees and moonlight reflecting off the river, groups of teenagers gathered near the bridge, armed with flashlights and cigarettes. They were both frightened and thrilled, whispering "Frogman," as if daring themselves. Some swore they heard splashes in the water or saw a shadow move through the grass. The rumor soon became more than a single-man story. It turned into a pastime for the youth, and slowly into a source of dread for the adults. At Sunday services, the elderly spoke of it not as a modern monster, but as an echo of old legends, the spirit of the river, a guardian demon of the land, or the descendant of some forgotten ritual. Their imaginations gave the tale a mystical weight, turning Frogman into a figure both feared and revered. People whispered that if one insulted it, their family would suffer misfortune, but if avoided respectfully, it might grant good fortune. Meanwhile, the local press began to stir. A small Cincinnati paper printed a short piece about a strange creature sighted on Loveland Bridge. The article carried a half-mocking, half-teasing tone, but it was enough to spread the story beyond the town. Curious reporters visited, interviewed locals, photographed the bridge, and added their own vague descriptions, which only fueled readers' imaginations. For a tiny town, appearing in the newspapers was a double-edged sword, pride mixed with dread. The first witness, the man who had seen the three creatures, regretted ever speaking. He became a laughingstock to some, called delusional a liar. Yet others hounded him, demanding he retell the night's events over and over. His nightmare was no longer confined to his memory. It invaded his daily life. At night he lay awake, hearing phantom splashes in the river, raspy breaths in the dark. He feared the bridge, the riverside, and withdrew into reclusion to escape the gossip. Frogman was no longer just a rumor. It seeped into daily life. Children drew frogmen in their schoolbooks. Teenagers formed frogman hunting clubs, and parents bolted their doors at night. Some families warned their children, "Don't go out alone after dark, or the frogman will take you." The true terror was not whether frogman was real, but the power of rumor itself, the way it reshaped the community's way of living and thinking. Then one September night, an event caused the rumor to explode. A young couple, parked by the riverside for some privacy, returned in shock. They swore they saw a dark figure standing nearby. At first, they thought it was an animal, but when their headlights shone on it, they screamed. It had glowing eyes, slick wet skin, and a lurching half-human gait. Before they could react, it raised something resembling a glowing wand, waved it in the air, then vanished into the brush. Terrified, they sped away. When their account spread, no one could remain indifferent. These were two well-known, respectable youths, with no reason to lie. They also had no knowledge of the earlier man's glowing raw detail, yet their testimony matched his perfectly. It seemed Frogman had not vanished after that first sighting, but was still lurking, waiting to reveal itself. The next morning, the town buzzed as if struck by an invisible storm. In the marketplace, on porches, in the tavern, everywhere, people whispered about the couple. Some pitied them, saying they were too shaken, while others insisted they had truly seen the frogman. If that were true, then the town was no longer safe. The story spilled beyond Loveland. Larger Ohio newspapers covered it, late-night radio shows debated it, and ghost hunters arrived with cameras and recorders. Yet Frogman eluded them, leaving only blurry photos, eerie sounds, or dark frames with glowing eyes. The locals grew weary of outsiders. Fear was bad enough. Now they endured crowds, flashlights, and mocking laughter from thrill-seekers. But one rainy night, Frogman reappeared, not before tourists' cameras, but in the heart of town. A couple returning from a late party swore they saw a figure leap from the river onto the road, staring at them with blazing red eyes. The husband tried to drive away, but the car stalled in the downpour. Panic surged as the creature stood motionless, watching. On the third try, the engine roared back, and as they sped off, the rearview mirror reflected the unmoving figure, its eyes glowing in the storm. The tale struck Loveland silent. Frogman had left the riverside, crossing into human territory. That meant nowhere was safe. Children cried at the sound of rain. Adults locked doors and hung charms from church or foreign shops. Wind chimes were strung on porches, believed to ward it off. Yet deep down, everyone knew such trinkets would not stop Frogman if it truly wished to enter. One night, a young police officer patrolling near the bridge heard a splash. Shining his flashlight, his heart froze. A broad, wet face with burning red eyes stared up from the swirling river. It rose, standing upright, child-sized in height, but with a muscular, slick body. The officer shouted, drew his gun, and as the creature lunged toward him, long arms outstretched, he fired. A raspy scream echoed, then it retreated, sliding back into the river. Though he survived, the officer was never the same. He grew silent, gaunt, sleepless. He claimed Frogman haunted his dreams, standing at his bedside, breathing heavily, eyes glowing without blinking. Each time he awoke, the room was empty, but wet footprints stained the floor. Even as skeptics dismissed it as hysteria or mass fabrication, the mounting testimonies left Loveland unable to deny it. The small town lived under unbearable tension. No one knew if Frogman was a freak of nature, a failed experiment, or something worse, a ghost born from the Ohio River itself. And soon, the rumor spread beyond Ohio, accompanied by a chilling warning. Frogman was not confined to Loveland. Some swore to have seen it along the Kentucky riverbanks, even farther away. They whispered that once Frogman left its hiding place, it would never stop. It would haunt other rivers, other bridges, other small, defenseless towns. Loveland was drowned in fear, yet fear itself sustained the legend. And in the riverside fog, some swore they still heard splashing, ragged breathing, and saw red eyes glowing through the night. The frogman was still there, waiting patiently, like a nightmare that never ends.